Mecklenburg County election debates are a service of WTVI, Mecklenburg County, and the League of Women Voters of Charlotte-Mecklenburg. The views and opinions expressed in these debates are those of the candidates and do not necessarily represent the views of WTVI, its management, Mecklenburg County, or the League of Women Voters.
Hello, I'm Sean Flynn, Managing Editor and Senior Reporter with News 14 Carolina. In the next 60 minutes, we'll speak with the 10 Republican candidates who are running for the United States House of Representatives, District 9. Now, all of these questions come from the League of Women Voters, and the candidates have not seen or heard them in advance. Each candidate will have 60 seconds to answer each of the questions. There will be no challenges, and there will be a 30-second closing statement at the end. Now, let's go ahead and meet the candidates. First, we have Jim Pendergraft, Rick Killian, John Gauthier, Robert Pittenger, Edwin Peacock, Andy Doolin, Mike Steinberg, Dan Barry, Richard Lynch, and Kenneth Leonchek. All right, the first question is real simple. Why are you the best candidate to represent District 9? We'll start with Mr. Pendergraft.
Thank you, Sean, and thank you for the opportunity to come here this evening. I'm the best candidate because I believe that I have built a reputation in this community of trust and leadership over my nearly 40 years of law enforcement experience in this county. I was a sheriff for 13 years. People trust me, and I am going to be a leader in Congress, and it is not about me. This is about you, the voter. I am your representative. I am going to Congress to represent you and your interest, and I want to represent you in the way that you want to be represented, just like Sue Myrick has done for almost 18 years. I want to continue in her vein and be an advocate for the constituents in the district, and I thank you for your vote on May the 8th.
All right, Mr. Killian.
Well, thank you, Sean. I believe I'm the best candidate for this district amongst a group of well-qualified candidates because of my lifetime of experiences. I've served in the North Carolina State House for 3 terms, 6 years now. I've also served in the military all of my adult life, and I've had a successful business career. I think that those collective experiences uniquely qualify me to represent you in Congress. Those experiences will enable me to do the things that many of the other candidates talk about doing, things like reducing government spending, creating private sector jobs, and I've served my country. I think those things collectively make me the best candidate, and I would be very proud to be your congressman.
All right, Mr. Gauthier.
Hi, I'm John Gauthier. I'm one of 15 children, and I do like the odds in this race. We started with 11 candidates, and now there are just 10. I worked in the Reagan White House cutting budgets, also worked in the Bush White House, first Bush White House cutting budgets. And I worked for Jack Kemp for 3 years. I served as his Deputy Assistant Secretary for Policy. I also went up on Capitol Hill, cut $16 billion in spending. And the reason I'm in this race is the deficit. And if that's your priority issue, please take a look at me. Consider John Gauthier for the 9th Congressional District.
All right.
Thank you.
Mr. Pittenger.
I'm Robert Pittenger. Thank you for your interest in being involved tonight with us. Your concern for our republic is what is going to be the hope for our future. As you know, I have been in business in our region. I've been blessed to raise our family here. And of course, I served you in the North Carolina Senate. And there I established a proven track record of being a conservative, bringing my business experience to the state. I was helpful in identifying over $1.5 billion in savings, which is now being incorporated into the state budget. I've also was awarded the Taxpayer Advocate Award for my efforts to reduce the very high tax burden in our state. I want to bring the same spirit of conservative fiscal management to our federal government, and I appreciate your support.
Mr. Peacock.
Hi, I'm Edwin Peacock. I'm running for Congress because I want to continue in the role of being a citizen servant. First, as a citizen, I've been 20 years as a small business owner, proudly representing Northwestern Mutual, talking with customers about problems with money. We've got a lot of problems with money in this country right now, and we need leaders who've also got experience. I proudly served you on the Charlotte City Council for 4 years. I served on the Budget Committee and chaired the Environment Committee for 4 years. I think now more than ever, we need leaders with a combination of business experience as well as experience in the political arena, and I have both.
All right, the question again is, why are you the best candidate to represent District 9? It goes to you, Mr. Doolin.
Thank you, Sean. Hi, I'm Andy Doolin. I'm a candidate for Congress. My plan is to take my 6 years, I'm now starting my 7th year in the 4th term as a Charlotte City Councilman, an elected representative of the citizens of Charlotte. I'm going to take that experience and roll it into Congress. I'm known on the Charlotte City Council as the man that will ask the tough questions, and I continue to do that as I move to Washington with your help. We're going to go up there and laser in on the customer service. I'm fully aware that you, the voters, are the customer, and we respond and work for you. Please help me get to Congress. We are going to work on everything, and I'm going to have, you will have my cell phone number, 704-968-8776. Thank you.
Mr. Steinberg.
Folks, my name is Mike Steinberg, and I am the only candidate here that was willing to take on the GOP establishment. Why is that important? Well, both parties are responsible for the mess that this country's in. And I know that there's a path out, and that path is the Constitution. We need to limit the federal government to its narrow constitutional role. And to do that, it's going to take people in Washington who aren't sold out to special interests. And another differentiator between myself and the rest of the candidates is I was willing to sign an agreement, a transparency agreement, that allows you to request an audit of my finances for the rest of my life. Last Saturday, Sue Myrick told all of us that money runs everything in Washington. And folks, that's what's wrong with this country. We need to get the money out of politics, and the only way to do that is to bind your representatives to a transparency agreement, allowing them to be audited just like I did.
All right, Mr. Berry.
Thank you very much. My name's Dan Berry, and I would like to garner your vote for this election for a handful of reasons. First and foremost, I understand firsthand the regulatory environment that we operate under and the burdensome tax environment created by this administration. I want to take the 25 years of experience I have working with small business owners and entrepreneurs to Washington so that I can fight with my colleagues there to begin to shrink the size of the federal government and unleash the entrepreneurial spirit in this country again. We need to begin to rein in the regulatory environment and the tax environment and take it off the back of individuals and begin to shrink the budget deficits and to shrink the size of the federal government.
All right, Mr. Lynch.
My name is Richard Lynch, and I believe the question is what would make me best qualified. And without a doubt, I am the only candidate that's on this stage who not only refers to the Constitution consistently in every debate. I'm a firm believer that the only way this country will ever get back on track is a return to constitutional government. There have been candidates on this stage that espouse the Constitution, and at the same time they will want to do things that are outside the constitutional realm. I'm telling you, 5 steps to the Constitution government would be: 1, no bill to exceed 10 pages. 2, all bills must have the article of the Constitution gives it authority. Number 3, no bill to have content in it that doesn't pertain to the title of the bill. Number 4, all bills to be posted online, written in layman's terms for 7 days prior to introduction. And number 5, any bill that requires expenditures must show the cost, the beneficiary, who's going to pay for it, how it's going to get paid for, and a sunset date. GoForLynch.com. Thank you very much.
All right, and finally, Mr. Leonchek.
Thank you. My name's Ken Leonchek. I'm proud to be running for Congress. You can learn more about me at voteken2012.com. There have been 2 themes that have characterized my campaign. The first is a return to the American dream, telling everyone in the 9th District that we don't have to settle. We can go forward and find the future that is promised for us. The second is politics for positive people. I've been running a positive campaign, focusing on the issues and trying to bring a sense of joy back into politics, a sense of optimism back into politics. I'm a proud social conservative. I'm the only one up here who has been consistently and frequently in these debates speaking in favor of the marriage amendment. So I'll use the rest of my time to say on May 8th, I ask you to vote for the marriage amendment, defend traditional values, and check me out at VoteKen2012.com.
All right, moving on to the second question. I checked this morning, the current U.S. national debt is $15.7 trillion. That's a little bit more than $50,000 per American citizen and $138,000 per tax-paying citizen. What is your plan to curtail this debt if you are elected? And we'll go ahead and start with Mr. Killian.
Thank you, Sean. Sean, what I would do is what I had done already in Raleigh. I would go and start a zero-based approach where we meet the needs of the citizens and not the wants of the special interest. If we start to build our budget, which is the most significant legislative item we have in the agenda, we will do all that we can to, again, meet those needs of the people, but not the wants of the special interests. If you start from the ground floor and build up line by line, justifying each line, that's the way that you'll be able to make sure that you're doing the right things for the people. And it is very important because our debt is the greatest threat to our national security. It's what's driven me my entire legislative career, and it's something that I would make a priority and focus on right away.
Mr. Gauthier.
Hi, Sean. The deficit is the reason why I'm running for Congress. And when you look at the biggest problem, it's our unfunded mandatory spending programs. I have it on my website. I call it the $45 trillion pledge. It's the sum of all the money that we've committed to spend, of money that we don't have. It may end up being over $100 trillion. That includes Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. And we need to, and I promise to, lead Congress next year to enact legislation to address this problem. And we have to do it next year because many of these programs, the greatest need is going to be about 6, 7 years from now. We have to phase those changes in. And an example of what we're seeing right now, just this morning we had Social Security was in the news. And what it said was that the fund was going to run out of money in 15 years. It's actually much sooner than that. That's money that's already been spent. And so we have to address it next year.
All right, Mr. Pittenger.
Thank you. Well, the big elephant in the room is definitely a $16 trillion debt, and that has to be addressed. And that's why I believe as a businessman, I will bring the focus that needs to be brought to the fiscal issues in our country. This debt has been accrued because of just totally out-of-pace spending. When you're spending $3.7 trillion and you're only taking in $2.2 trillion, there's a real problem. And that's fiscal mismanagement at the highest. Our combined tax rate for the corporate rate and the marginal personal rate is about $1.1 trillion. So if you doubled the tax burden of individuals and of corporations in this country, you couldn't make up the difference. The difference has to be made up in a prudent fiscal approach to our government, and that hasn't been done for the last 30 years. Both parties have been involved, but I'm going to bring the type of management and direction and commitment to make sure it's achieved. Thank you.
Mr. Peacock.
Admiral Mike Mullen, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, said that our greatest threat in this greatest threat to national security is actually our debt. And our debt right now at the levels that we're running are simply unsustainable. I've been running my campaign off of sustainable government, and this is a cornerstone to it. Currently, the budget that's been passed by the House of Representatives proposes that we reduce deficits from 24% to 20% of GDP. We also are going to, in comparison to the Obama budget that's in place, cut $5 trillion in spending over the next 10 years. It's very apparent to me after reading the Bowles-Simpson report and looking at the realities that you simply can't cut your way out of this deficit and you can't grow your way out of this deficit. I think as a business person, I think that we need to have leaders that are going to be taking a business-minded approach to something, not a political one.
All right, Mr. Doolin.
Thank you. It turns out that all of the above is true. We have got to cut spending, cut spending, cut spending. We have to look at the unfunded mandates, of course, that are the big, as we say, the elephant in the room. But we also have to look at the unsustainable growth of the pension programs, both on the federal level and, yes, here locally, too. On the Charlotte City Council, year after year, we fight and work trying to get the budgets down, and I will continue to do that this year. Some of the biggest expense we have here in Charlotte is the retirement plans for our employees. Now, they've worked hard for us, and in many cases, they deserve their retirement. But then you expand it to the federal level, and we have absolutely got to get rid of some of those expenses, those folks. Let's get rid of the Department of Education. Let's get rid of some other departments in the spending and the retirement funds. That will help us move forward toward zeroing down the debt.
Okay, the question again is, what is your plan to curtail the current growing national debt? Mr. Steinberg?
Folks, it's real simple. The federal government has been operating outside of the realm of the Constitution for about 100 years. So ever since FDR passed programs, social programs, to address the Great Depression, those programs have only grown and festered and have contributed to the mess that we're in. What we need to do is get all of the federal programs that are operating outside of the Constitution removed. That will take care of, number one, it'll shift the power back to the states where it rightfully belongs. Number two, it'll reduce the overhead and we can use that money to pay down the debt. And then three, the greatest benefit is it gets rid of all of the regulations that so many of these different agencies are churning out every day. If we restore the federal government back to its narrow constitutional role, it will pay down the debt and get rid of the regulations that are driving jobs overseas.
Mr. Barry?
Thank you very much. We have two enormous challenges coming right at us like a freight train. The first of which is the accumulating national debt and the pain that it is placing on our budget. The second, as alluded to just a minute ago, is that Medicare will lack appropriate funding by 2023, and Social Security was effectively bankrupt by 2032. At the same time, we have these massive deficits in social programs that are an important backbone of our society and promises that we've made to our seniors. We have to begin looking at things that we have to do in this country, that the Constitution requires us to do, and those things that are nice to do. And take a look at every single agency and every program and begin to dismantle those so that we as a country are focused on meeting those obligations and protecting our seniors.
All right, Mr. Lynch?
First, I want to thank Mr. Steinberg and Mr. Barry because they gave me a whole minute to donate to something else because they said exactly what I was going to say. But in that vein, there's also an issue that's not being addressed. On this podium today, there are candidates up here who constantly talk about how great the Paul Ryan plan is. I'm here to tell you that if you go to the first page of the Paul Ryan plan, that you will see written in there in very plain English that he believes that Congress should spend money to promote the visions and philosophies of Congress. He goes on to say that it's also to be used to ensure equality under the rule of law. Now, I have read this Constitution front to back, and I tell you what, I cannot find anywhere in this document where we should be spending money for those types of things. This is the problem. Beautiful words, well spoken, but the end result is $16 trillion in debt. Thank you.
Mr. Lonchek?
First I want to say that Paul Ryan's been taking a lot of hits from the left, and it's a sad day when the right turns on him as well. The fact is, the Paul Ryan budget is an excellent response to our problems. Senator DeMint, Senator Paul, and Senator Lee also have a great response to our deficit. It's easy. We stop spending more than we take in. We eliminate the programs that are outside of the Constitution, and we eliminate the departments that are outside of the Constitution. But I want to also say that this is the 6th forum we've been in where we're constantly asked about fiscal issues. The social issues matter. Values matter. If we divorce morality from economics, we get chaos. And recently, there have been opponents of the marriage amendment who have likened it to Jim Crow laws. I can just say how far we've come, but how little we remember. And I'm very sorry in favor of all the Bible-believing Christians and the black community that people would use that kind of term to refer to that amendment. I'll stop because I'm out of time.
Okay, and finally, Mr. Pendergraft.
Thank you. I do agree that the Paul Ryan plan is a good plan. It's going to take tax reform and a lot of work to get our deficit under control. But the problem that I see is that most people don't know what our national debt means, and they're just not paying attention. When you talk about we're $16 trillion in debt, I always say, well, do you know how much $1 trillion is? If you spent $1 million a day since the birth of Christ until today, you would not have spent $1 trillion. We owe more than 16 times that. That's the bad shape that we're in, and it's going to be painful for every American citizen to get out of this. We need to cut spending. We need to get rid of federal agencies that have no business being in existence, because anyone that's ever run a business knows that most of your costs are with staff. So we've got to take a sharp pencil to that immediately and start getting this under control.
All right, from the economy to some transportation issues. What is your position on rail transportation, both high-speed rail and light rail in Mecklenburg County? Would you continue to try and support federal funding of some of these issues here in the state? We'll go ahead and start with Mr. Gauthier.
Well, first of all, I would say that given the circumstances of our federal budget and our growing national debt, we really just cannot consider some of the grandiose schemes that have been put on the table. We do know that in major urban markets, it's important to have a transportation system that works. What we do know is that transportation by car is preferred by most consumers. And so widening our highways, providing appropriate access to the uptown area as well as to peripheral job markets is the most important activity that we can achieve. But as far as major projects, I think while we've made, progress as a city, we just have to be careful about how much money we're spending, because as a nation, we don't get on top of our deficit. We just have other issues that are much bigger.
Mr. Pittenger?
Thank you. Rail can be very effective in high-density areas, and it is effective, of course, in the Northeast. Much of the commuters, they use rail every day. In our region of the world, we don't have that kind of density. And as such, rail does become a very cost-effective measure. If you completed all the rails in the entire region, transportation experts say it would transport about 2% of the daily commuters. I did a budget with the DOT several years ago outlining how many roads could be widened in our region. We could widen 77 to Iredell. We could widen 85. We could complete 485. We could widen 485. We could widen Independence out to the Outer Belt, and we could widen 73 in Cornelius, all for about $200 million. The cost of our first rail was about $800 million. So I think it's a matter of perspective and what really the needs are compared to what would be something attractive to have in our region.
Mr. Peacock?
I'm a supporter of multimodal transit planning, and on the Charlotte City Council, we passed a 2030 transit plan that looks at all areas of our congestion problems, and it takes all modes of transportation. Yes, rail, yes, roads, yes, bike lanes, yes, walking and pedestrian lanes as well, too. With a city that's projected to be the number one, or we've just received from the 2010 census that we're the number one fastest growing region in the area, in the country, we have to address our long-term transit needs. The federal government's role in transit planning, particularly with roads, has to be a priority for this region, as that's the most used mode of all. But here locally, we have a half-cent sales tax. That half-cent sales tax, 3/4 of that is used to expand our bus system. Another part of that is used to expand a very successful light rail system that has gone from South Charlotte all the way out to Pineville. The projections for it to go to UNCC should be first, and then beyond that, we need to plan carefully.
Mr. Doolin?
Thank you. As Charlotte built and has now operated what's known as the South Line for the last 4 years, we've seen that the numbers are above projections there. And Charlotte is moving forward as I'm on the city council, and I'm supporting the expansion of what is the blue line out toward UNC Charlotte. Matter of fact, we worked on that last night. At the same time, the people of Mecklenburg County voted 70% to 30% to keep the light rail line project going, and as a representative of the people, I've supported that. I applaud the good folks in Iredell County that have voted against the red line extension. The thing just doesn't make sense. And I understand that we have Huntersville, Cornelius, and Davidson in this district. We will work through that. And I voted now 9 times, including last Monday night, against the streetcar that runs through downtown Charlotte. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't serve anyone. And I do not support the streetcar.
Mr. Steinberg?
Folks, I think a lot of people here, they're on city councils, they're on the county, some work for the state. I'm not a politician. I'm a businessman and a problem solver. The question was, should the federal government sponsor these projects? And folks, I'm sorry, we're $16 trillion in debt. We need to be cutting expenditures. And that's what I think the main problem is. Now, folks here have referred to the Ryan plan and said that it's taken attack and he's being attacked. Folks, I've read the Ryan plan. and it doesn't call for a balanced budget until 2063. To me, that's not acceptable. If we were to make the cuts that we could make in Congress, we could balance the budget virtually immediately. Would it be difficult? Absolutely. It would mean telling some states and cities that no, they're not going to get their transportation money, and there'd be many other hard decisions to be made. But we've got to start making them now and not trying to justify why we're spending money that we don't have and we're borrowing to spend for other projects. It's not right.
Mr. Berry?
Thank you very much. Like all of us, I've sat in I-77 late in the afternoon and early evening driving up to Iredell County. I've sat in Providence Road as we've tried to struggle to fight to Union County, the fastest growing county in this state and in this region, and during the boom, one of the fastest growing counties in the country. And I know firsthand the challenges we have with transportation. But being said, we've made a commitment to a generation of our population that is either reached retirement or approaching retirement age right now. And encumbered in part of that is this $17 trillion debt. And as I said when we sat down and started, there are things that we have to do as a government, and there are things that are nice to do. And transportation is a nice to do thing. We have to get our arms around spending in this country and focus on our current obligations before we expand. And as we do that, rein in the size of the federal government and then have real tax reform.
Mr. Lynch?
Once again, I had to go back to the Constitution because with all due respect to the gentleman here, nowhere in our federal Constitution as a representative am I to go to Congress and bring back money for roadways in North Carolina. It's just not there. The problem that we have is over the years we've had, Congress has a 10% approval rating and a 95% reelection rate. That's absurd. You couldn't do that in the private sector. The only reason that they're elected back again is because individually everyone goes to Washington and brings back the goodies. So they're heroes in their districts. Collectively, they're destroying the country. We sit here and we blame each other. The fact of the matter is we, the voters, are creating the problems because we like these guys that we're sending there. They're coming back with money for our districts. And that's not what Congress is supposed to do, especially your House of Representatives. Your job is outlined in the U.S. Constitution. And I'm here to tell you, when you send me to Washington, that's my contract right there, and I'll work by it.
Mr. Leonchek?
We don't have the money for rail programs. Now, roads are a different story. The United States Constitution says that the federal government should provide for national defense. The United States Constitution says the federal government is allowed to make legislation when it comes to interstate commerce. Our highways are a part of our national defense and a part of important interstate commerce. So we need to be involved in the highway system. Light rail, we just don't have the money in this economic climate. I want to finish my comment from last time on the marriage amendment. The Jim Crow laws were the worst that humanity has to offer. People were killed because they're the wrong color or the other color. People were said they can't drink from the same water fountains because you don't look like me. Now that is entirely different from an amendment that doesn't do anything. It simply codifies the status quo and prevents judicial activist judges from changing the will of the people. That's why I support the marriage amendment. And that's why I'm very upset when it's called similar to Jim Crow laws.
Mr. Pendergraft?
Yes, I do not believe that we have the money to put $1 more into light rail or anything like that locally from the federal government. We have to balance our checkbook at the federal level just like we as American citizens have to before we start doing anything like that. As a county commissioner, we got presentations, multiple presentations about the red line to Mooresville up into Iredell County. One of the questions I asked was, tell me which light rail has ever been self-sufficient and has been self-supportive, and there's never been one. If it's such a great idea, let the private industry and private business do that. But we as taxpayers should focus our money on expanding the roads, and let's get the traffic moving here before we even delve into anything like that.
All right, finally on the rail question, Mr. Kelly?
My position on roads has been for a long time now, for transportation, roads first. I have ridden public transportation from San Francisco all the way to Prague, and I understand it and I understand its merits. But we have a responsibility to maintain our current infrastructure. And that's why when I was assigned to be the chairman of the Appropriations Subcommittee on Transportation, I established that vision of roads first because I think it's important that we do things to increase the quality of life of our citizens and also the economic competitiveness for our region. And so in doing that vision, in establishing that vision, I built a $4 billion budget. And as a result of that budget, without raising taxes, we are now in the process of repairing 1,300 bridges all across this state and contract resurfacing up to 2,500 more roads. So I believe that our priorities have to be roads, and that would be my position.
All right, moving on to some unemployment issues. Obviously, the Great Recession put millions of Americans out of work. Where do you stand on extending the unemployment benefits and the payroll tax, and why? We'll start with Mr. Pittenger.
I think we have been enormously generous to those who have needed the unemployment compensation. It's gone on now for about 99 weeks. The maximum, I believe, in Europe is about 39 weeks. We have done what we could do as a nation for those who needed jobs, but we need a greater workfare type of program in our country. We have escalated in the food stamps more than 100% in the last 3 years. We've escalated in all forms of welfare programs to the tune of about $1 trillion. So there has to be a more prudent approach toward managing the resources to where we give people the opportunity to work, but we don't incentivize them to stay home. And we need a tax policy that's low. We need regulations that are low and not intrusive so that business can grow and expand and create jobs. That's what America needs, and that's what the people respond to.
All right, Mr. Peacock.
The current priority of elected officials on all levels needs to be on unemployment and creating jobs. Extending unemployment benefits is a case-by-case issue. It also goes along with the payroll tax. What we need in this country is we need a permanent direction of which we're going to go to create jobs and to get things moving. And that starts with tax and regulatory policy. Reducing the tax and regulatory burden of small business owners is really the first leg of that position to move the economy forward as it relates to that.
Mr. Doolin?
Not one job is created until a developer or someone who builds something puts money at risk. I will fight hard to repeal Dodd-Frank and get the regulatory banking regulations out of the way. Dodd-Frank, to me, is the Obamacare to the financial industry. Once we get the money flowing to the developer, then he goes and hires an architect, who hires a land planner, who hires the guy who puts the asphalt driveway down. And what you end up with is a shopping center or a building that has a Subway sandwich shop in it. One Subway is 15 jobs. Then you expand that. I mean, cleaners, businesses, folks come here. We've got to create money to the developers to build things and to create the jobs, and I'm going to work hard on that. I do that on City Council to stop the regulatory problems, and I'll continue to do that in Congress with your help.
All right, Mr. Steinberg.
Folks, the federal government doesn't create jobs. The best thing they can do so that the private sector creates jobs is real simple. They need to roll back regulations, and the best way to do that is to get rid of the departments that are churning out these job-killing regulations. The reason why jobs have gone overseas isn't simply because of payroll. That's one aspect of it. The bigger aspect is the ease of doing business. There's an expression in the financial world that goes, money goes where it's treated best. Well, so do jobs. And our country has actually been hostile towards jobs by the amount of regulations and the amount of taxes we've imposed on our business owners. So if we can roll that back and show the rest of the world that we're serious about creating a job-friendly country, we'll see investments pour in from all over the world, and we'll see business owners that have money in their own accounts to reinvest begin to grow and expand their footprint.
Okay, a reminder, the question is, where do you stand on extending unemployment benefits and the payroll tax, and why? And Mr. Berry, it's to you.
Thank you very much. And the best way to address unemployment has been mentioned there already, and that's creation of jobs. And the best way to create jobs is to get the federal government out of the way and off the back of the independent business owner and the entrepreneur. GE and Bank of America and General Motors are not the basis of employment in this country. The basis of employment in this country comes from the small business owner that just wants to grow a little, maybe add a job or two. And you do that thousands and thousands of times, and people are back at work. Dodd-Frank is one example, and we talk about it all the time, of where the federal government has just clamped down on the individual and made it almost impossible for them to grow. At the same time, we have the Fed mashing the accelerator as hard as it can to stimulate job growth. And so what we have is a car shuttering down the interstate with one foot on the brake and one foot on the gas. We have to get the federal government off the back of the individual business owner and allow them to create capital and access to capital so they can grow their businesses.
Mr. Lynch?
Recently, at another debate, we were asked a question. The current debt is 16 trillion, is expected to go to 26 trillion within 25 years or whatever. And 2 questions later, we were posed with the question, what can government do to get health care costs under control? And the irony there is sort of like going to Madonna and trying to get rules on what's the best way to enforce chastity. The problem is we have this high unemployment rate. We have the problems that we have in this country because of government's involvement. And sadly, their involvement is outside of the Constitution. And I know that I tell people all the time, it's like beating a dead horse. But I'm going to beat that horse till it gets up and gallops away. We have the answers well within our reach to get this country back on track economically and fiscally and everything else. But in order to do that, we must absolutely positively have representatives who understand what the role they are supposed to do in Washington according to the U.S. Constitution. Thank you.
Mr. Leonchek?
I think the issue is actually philosophical. So let me be blunt. This election is about power. It's about who is going to have that power, who do you trust to have the power, and how are they going to wield it? The fact is, do we want a government that's involved in every little bit of our lives, from our health care to our credit cards? Or do we want a government that sits back and creates a place where entrepreneurs can thrive, where individuals have liberty? Now, I think that's the American dream. I believe in the individual. I believe in individual liberty. Now, I care very much for the poor. I've spent my life working with the poor. I'm a preacher. But it should be churches and the private sector that's taking care of the unemployed folks. It shouldn't be the federal government. Let's get back to a limited federal government, and let's allow the American dream to once again shine.
Mr. Pendergrass?
Thank you. You asked about unemployment benefits and extending those. I do believe that there should be a safety net for people that are out of work and have been put out of work, but I think you can extend it too far to the point that I've been around people long enough and studied people long enough to know that you're always going to have someone that takes advantage of the situation. I know business people that have told me that they've had people to apply for jobs, they have hired them, and then turn right around and ask them, can you pay me under the table so I can continue to draw my unemployment? That is not right. That needs to be monitored. But the most important thing is we have to get jobs back into this community, and it seems to me from everyone I speak with is the federal government is the one that is keeping that from happening. Just use some common sense, get the federal government out of our business, and let the business people do what they know to do, and that's expand jobs and expand their business. Then we wouldn't have to worry about that employment issue.
Mr. Killian?
I think that the government has a responsibility to take care of people who through physical or mental inabilities can't take care of themselves. But at the same time, we have got to stop paying people not to work. And if you want to understand why, all you have to do is look to Europe, specifically Southern Europe. And it's not just Greece. It's Italy, it's Spain, it's Hungary, it's most of Eastern Europe. In fact, the whole European Union is being threatened right now, and we are feeling it in our markets as recently as today as a result of their efforts. Simply put, Northern Europe doesn't want to continue to afford to take care of Southern Europe. Germany is the only country in Europe that's doing well. And it comes down to the fact that Southern Europe, for many years, have enabled their citizens to live too easily. And it's threatening their economies, and it's threatening the entire European Union, and it's threatening the world economy. We need to lead this world out of this economic crisis by making strong, courageous fiscal decisions. And I want to go to Congress and do that for you.
Mr. Gauthier?
Well, I think what we saw happen immediately after this financial crisis just 3 years ago was that the government rushed out to large corporations, expecting them to provide all the solutions, for them to dramatically increase employment. And of course, just the opposite happened. We saw our unemployment rate soar, doubled in just a period of months. What we really needed to do was to reach out to our small business community, to figure out how they can add jobs. To give you a concrete example of how we could have done that, and I would propose this in Congress, is changing our tax laws so an individual who's unemployed, wants to start a business, could tap into their 401k and not have a 10% penalty, as so many Americans found themselves faced with. And as another example of what we need to do as a country is from a regulatory standpoint, we need to have a net reduction in that regulatory burden, especially for small businesses.
All right, moving on to another question. I have a specific question here, but since this is kind of a general audience that is able to watch, immigration, illegal immigration, it's a significant problem facing the federal government, obviously a growing issue here in North Carolina. The question here specifically says, should children be allowed to attend schools, receive health care, and other benefits if their parents are here illegally? Please address that, and if you can, at the same time, kind of your thoughts on illegal immigration as a whole, and I believe we start with Mr. Peacock here.
My three-part plan to immigration is first and foremost to secure the border, and that starts with local law enforcement and some of the strategies that we've had put in place by one of the members on this stage as well. Secondly, we need to drive the illegality of workers coming into this country, and we need to drive that illegality by creating a smart guest worker program. And the third part is to make English the first language. As far as it relates to benefits, as it relates to individuals here coming into this country and that are here illegally, that are seeking tuition and trying to better themselves, that's obviously a very sensitive situation, particularly for those that were born here by those that were illegal immigrants, and you need to obviously tread carefully as it relates to that legislatively.
Okay, Mr. Dulon.
Thank you. Where we really only have one open border in North Carolina, that'd be our seaports. And so, of course, I'd like to strengthen the ability for us to protect ourselves, protect our families, protect our communities by something coming in that would harm us. I really have faith in the hopeful new Republican Governor Pat McCrory as he will come in and strengthen that border for us. I have faith in Tom Tillis leading the House, and I have faith in Phil Berger leading on the Senate side. The state can tighten that up for us. Also, it's a tough question about families of illegal immigrants. We have to have compassion for those. America is a country of immigrants, so we need to work through that. Now, if an immigrant is here illegally and he or she commits a crime, absolutely, they must be deported, and we'll have to deal with the sundry problems of that, their children. We have to cut costs. There's no reason for us to be putting medical care and education as well. Tough subject. Look forward to tackling it.
Mr. Steinberg.
Folks, the answer is really simple. We have E-Verify so that only legal citizens can be employed. I believe that we should be checking IDs at school to make sure that the school children are legal citizens of our country. And in our hospitals, only life-threatening care should be given. Right now, unfortunately, people who have entered this country illegally are taking advantage of our resources, and we are all paying the price for it, and we can't afford to do it any longer. Now, there's a path for legal immigration, and people should opt for that path. When they don't, I don't believe they should be afforded jobs, free health care, using our hospitals as primary care facilities, or going and being educated in our schools in their language. So if there's no jobs, no free health care, and no education, there's no incentive for them to stay or to come in the first place. And I think that's the direction we need to go.
Mr. Barrett.
Thank you very much. First and foremost, we're a nation of laws, and we need to enforce the laws. We need to enforce our border, and we need to find out who's here that's not supposed to be here and why they're here, and determine whether or not they want to do us harm. And if they do, take care of that, deport them. There are an awful lot of people here who came here because we are the last great hope for many people on this planet. And they came here like my grandparents or great-grandparents came here, and many of you, because they wanted a better life. We need to figure out how to find out who those people are and acclimate them into our society. They must learn our language, learn our customs, and join our society by obeying the laws that we have. It's impossible for us to begin that process, though, until we close our borders.
Mr. Lynch.
I'm going to go about this completely different because I'm not sure that too many gentlemen on this dais up here understand that it's actually a state responsibility. And all you have to do is you can read it in the Constitution. The federal government's responsible for naturalization laws. But when it comes to immigration, when it comes to who can come into your state, I refer you to, I believe it's Article 1, Section 8, Paragraph 4, or Section 9, Paragraph 2, that says that the states are the ones that can say who comes into their states and whatnot. It even goes so far to say in the Constitution that if a state is being invaded, they can declare war. It goes so far in Article 4, Section 4 says that the federal government will ensure that they are guarded against domestic violence. We have a situation in Arizona and the border states. They're trying to protect themselves according to the Constitution, and what are they meeting up with? They're being sued by the federal government that was sworn to defend them. Something's wrong there.
Mr. Lonchek.
America is a nation of laws, but it's also full of people of love. We have opened our arms, welcoming legal immigrants into this country from day one. Now, we have to defend ourselves. We have to make sure that we enforce the laws as they're written, because the opposite of lawfulness or enforced laws is chaos. But we're also a charitable and welcoming people. You know, my friend Bishop Andudu, who was in the Nuba Mountains, I went and visited him in 2004. Now, the radical Islamist regime of Sudan is currently trying to kill his people, and they've launched attacks just yesterday on South Sudan. Bishop Andudu is here now in America as a legal immigrant, as someone who has been given asylum because he was persecuted. That's the hope that we have as America. So let's focus on the positive. Let's be a shining example, and let's enforce the laws as they're written.
Mr. Pendergraft.
Yes, sir. As a sheriff of Mecklenburg County, I brought the immigration enforcement program to the east coast of the United States. And the reason I did that was the same reason that many states have taken on immigration enforcement, is because the federal government refuses to do it. I was doing it for self-defense, trying to make sure we could identify who was in the jail and who had been arrested, because we had no idea who they were. There were no fingerprints available to us to identify these folks. But this is a very complex issue. In the last 6 years, I think there have been 18,000 people removed from just Mecklenburg County because they've committed a crime. You ask about the school children. Well, I've been working on that as a county commissioner, trying to get to the bottom of this, and I have evidence that just between the 9th and 12th grade in Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools, there are about 10,000 illegal alien children that's costing the Mecklenburg County taxpayers over $100 million a year, and that is something that I do not believe that the Mecklenburg County taxpayers ought to be footing the bill for.
All right, Mr. Killian.
Illegal immigration is a state's responsibility, and as a state legislator, I've supported immigration reform. I even recall Sheriff Pendergraft coming to Raleigh and having dinner with him, talking about it to continue to get his policies applied at the state level. I also have to say that we as a nation, regardless if it's a federal level or a state level, simply cannot incentivize people to come to this country to take advantage of the laws, and that's in fact what the question posed and what the issue really is. And so therefore, I think that although it's very difficult, the bottom line is that we as a nation cannot and afford to incentivize those people to come, take advantage of our laws and our local services.
Mr. Gauthier.
The tools that we have to address this issue have changed dramatically over the last 5-10 years. When you think of technology, and when you go to the grocery store, Harris Teeter, they know what you're going to buy in terms of price points. And why isn't it, when it comes to immigration, that we can't figure out who's here in this country legally, who's not? We should be able to close our borders. And with that, we can provide that opportunity for individuals who see America as this land of opportunity around the world, and that we should have the opportunity for individuals to come here, but legally.
And finally, Mr. Pittenger.
Thank you. The 10th Amendment of the Constitution says that what is not already outlined in the document to the federal government should be relegated to the states. I'm really offended by the Justice Department and their efforts aggressively pursuing states who are trying to protect their own borders. Every state has that right. I wrote a bill, it was a primary sponsor, for a bill that would penalize businesses who hired illegal aliens. That bill, of course, in the Democrat legislature went nowhere. It's actively being pursued right now. We need to be able to have a proactive stance to make sure that we're not a state that is attractive for those to come here who are not legal. We are a country of laws, and those who come here must come under the rule of law. We also have to recognize that the enormous cost that is borne by every region, every hospital, every school, every social service bears enormous cost, and those people should be here on a legal basis.
All right, we are rapidly losing time for the rest of this debate. I'm going to try something here. I know you're all politicians, and we've got to keep it short. About 10 seconds here. No run-on sentences. Complete this sentence. And we'll start with Mr. Doolin. My role as a congressional representative is
To completely reintroduce customer service at the highest level to the people of the 9th Congressional District.
Mr. Steinberg,
To operate according to the Constitution of the United States of America.
Mr. Berry,
To operate within the limits of the Constitution and to make the land's laws.
Mr. Lynch,
You know my answer, to operate by the Constitution and only the Constitution.
Mr. Leonchek,
To represent the hearts and minds of all the people in the 9th District while operating within the Constitution, of course.
good use of the comma. Mr. Pendergraft,
To represent you as you would like to be represented.
Mr. Killian,
To reduce our national debt and to make sure that this nation does not go to war unless there's a direct threat against our national security interests.
Mr. Gauthier,
To serve your constituent needs and to balance our budget and to curb our national debt.
Mr. Pittenger,
To bring about business strengths and strong conservative convictions to bring prudent fiscal management to our country.
and finally, Mr. Peacock.
To create jobs and to sustain a government that can keep her promises.
That was impressive. Not a single run-on sentence. I'm very impressed with all you gentlemen. All right, you all have now 30 seconds for a closing statement. We'll go ahead and start with Mr. Steinberg.
Folks, there are huge differences between us. I know it may not seem like it, but there are. I was the only one to take on the current GOP establishment. Everyone else was willing to sit on the sidelines. I'm the only one to sign a transparency agreement, and I truly believe that I can change things in Washington by being authentic and by being transparent, and I will serve you faithfully.
All right, Mr. Berry.
Thank you very much. My name's Dan Berry, and you can learn more about me at electdanberry.com. But like Mike said, there are differences here. And the difference here is about tomorrow. This election is about tomorrow, not about yesterday. And it's about new beginnings and new choices. We've seen in this campaign challenges among candidates, and now is the time for you to recognize that it's time for a new beginning and fresh new faces to participate in our government and to represent you in Washington, D.C.
Mr. Lynch.
Yes, my name is Richard Lynch, and I'm here to tell you that of all the candidates up here, I am the only one who really and truly believes 100% that as a representative, we must employ the U.S. Constitution as it is written, not as we would like to have it interpreted to read. And that's what will make me different when you send me to Washington. I understand what my job is as your representative, and I will fulfill it 100% according to the Constitution.
Mr. Leonchek.
Thank you very much. My name's Ken Leonchek. You can learn more about me at voteken2012.com. I believe in politics for positive people, and I believe in the American dream, and I have a specific pro-growth agenda to get us back to the American dream. There's some really great people up here, and I think they should all be applauded for being in this race, and I hope I can earn your vote. So go to voteken2012.com.
Mr. Pendergraft.
I'm Jim Pendergraft, and I ask for your vote. I have worked for this community and protected you and your property for the last 40 years as a soldier, a police officer, and was elected 4 times as the sheriff of Mecklenburg County. I have established a reputation in this community of trust. I ask you to continue to trust me and elect me on May the 8th. Thank you so much.
Mr. Killian.
I'm Rick Killian, and I'm asking your vote because I want to go to Washington and make a difference now. My collective experience in the North Carolina legislature, the United States Army, and the Army Reserve, and in business enable me to go to Washington and do the things that we've talked about doing here tonight. You can learn more at www.killianforcongress.com.
Mr. Gauthier.
I'm John Gauthier. Of the candidates, I am the Reagan legacy candidate. We need to return to the era of the Reagan legacy. I worked for Ronald Reagan, the White House, also the first Bush administration, Jack Kemp. I want to finish briefly with a prayer. God, mend thine every flaw. Confirm thy soul with self-control, thy liberty with law.
Mr. Pittenger.
I've been so blessed to live in this community and raise our family, start a business from scratch and build it, And my hope is that I can bring my business ability and experience to expand that opportunity for other people. We're a great country, and we're a great country because we were built because of free markets, and we need to be able to return to that today.
Mr. Peacock?
As your next congressman, I'll be a conservative voice for economic stability, an advocate for a fiscally sound government, and a relentless promoter of private sector job creation. As a small business owner myself and a past city council member, I earned a reputation as being somebody that could work well with others and focus on fixing problems and finding solutions. Now, more than ever, we need to send leaders to Washington with these skills. You can visit more on my website at edwinpeacock.com, and I hope to have your vote on May 8th.
And finally, Mr. Doolin.
First, thanks to the League of Women Voters for hosting this debate today. We appreciate your continued support of our community. Andy Doolin, as a congressional member, is going to laser in on the customer service. I know who the customer is, and it is you and your family. Please call me with your complaints and your suggestions. 704-968-8776. That is my cell phone number, 704-968-8776. I want to hear from you. Thank you.
All right, and I would like to take this opportunity to thank all 10 of you for participating in this debate, all 10 of you who are running for the House of Representatives District 9. I also want to thank all of you who are watching this. You're taking the time, obviously, to get yourself educated to vote, and we all appreciate that. Don't forget, early voting is already underway, or you can hit the ballots on Tuesday, May 8th. For more information on the candidates and issues, go to wtvi.org/debates or goleaguego.org. Thank you so much for watching.